Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Advancement Center, and welcome to another reading of the book, The Magic of Life by Robert Young. And we are continuing with chapter 33. On the other side of the island, things were quite different. The cyclone had started to tear the place apart. All of the services that were normally provided under cyclonic conditions were fully activated. Emergency services, emergency power, the small hospital was full of people, and the local shelters were also full of people. The Olson Plaza, the main plaza, was completely full. Henry's friend Andrew had done a marvelous job restoring the communication system, so it was easy for Henry to stay at home and control everything from there. Henry's home at that time was with Mary, in Mary's house. Henry had always called this place home. He could not imagine being anywhere but with Mary at this time, which was quite different to what he had felt a week or so before. Willem had recovered nicely from his bump on the head. He explained it as, well, I just went into repair mode, I suppose. Mary's concern and worry about her father was put to one side. Henry laughed when Willem finally awoke and immediately asked him, well, have you fixed the window? Not hello, or how are you, or I'm well, or where's Mary, or nothing like that. Willem had just looked straight at Henry and asked, have you fixed the window? Henry was amused and said, Willem, there's nothing wrong with you. We'll get you something to eat. Just stay where you are. When he walked out and told Mary, Mary could not believe it. Willem had caused them so much worry the night before, and now that he had recovered, all he was concerned about was the window. Mary thought to herself, well, that's Dad. That's just how he is. That's how he's always been. And she went in and gave Willem a big hug and asked him if he was ready to have something to eat. Do you want to stay in bed or do you want to get up? She asked. Willem's immediate reply was, I'm not staying in bed. I've got to check to see that everything's okay. This did not surprise Mary either. She said, okay, I'll leave you to get up and get dressed, and I'll see you in the kitchen. The noise in the small house that was so close to the beach was almost deafening. Mary's voice did not carry very well, so when she entered the kitchen and started talking to Henry, he could not hear her and did not respond. She had to walk right up to him and touch him on the shoulder to get any response. As Henry turned, Mary got a surprise. Henry's face had changed. It was like he was 10 years younger and seemed taller. He looked so beautiful. Henry, what's happened? Asked Mary as she looked at him. I think something has changed, replied Henry quietly. To Mary's surprise, even though there was so much loud noise, she could hear Henry quite clearly. There was something strange happening here, and it seemed like Henry was entirely different. All the harshness had left him, and his strength was so different. She knew that something really special had happened to Henry, only it must have happened in the few seconds that she had spent with Willem. Well, what seemed like only a few seconds, but it must have been a lot longer than that. Henry, sit down. Tell me what's going on, said Mary. Henry just looked at her with a radiant smile and said, everything's fine, Mary. It's just that something has changed around me and it feels good. It's like a huge weight has lifted off my shoulders. Mary had no idea what it was, but she was so impressed with the new Henry who now stood before her. She could feel an energy coming from him that was warm and comfortable, and she walked up closer to him and placed her arms around him. Henry's response was amazing. Mary's entire body lit up, and as Henry's arms went around her, she could feel the beautiful energy coming out of his body. It almost took her into another dimension, and the sound around her disappeared as she melted into Henry's arms. Oh, Henry, this is so beautiful, she said softly. Henry did not say a word. He just maintained the energy flow, and the love flowed from his body and filled Mary to a point where she felt she would disappear. Suddenly, Willem's voice came from the background. Right, you two, let's get something to eat, he called out. Henry and Mary turned to Willem and looked at him. Willem stopped immediately and said, Wow, you two look like you've had something special happen. It's like you're both glowing. Everything's so clear in this room. It's like a sound trap. I can hear very clearly. You've shut down the storm. Yeah, we have a little bit. We didn't need that noise in here at the moment, said Henry. Willem felt a familiar tinge of recognition in Henry's voice. He recognized that special voice and that special person. He also knew that the Henry who had affected him during childhood was back. Willem remembered so much in that moment. There was so much that he had forgotten, and much of what he had forgotten was what Henry had taught him, and now he could not believe that special being was back again. Willem had recognized this whole quality in Henry when he was a child, and it had seemed that Henry's special quality only appeared when he was in Willem's class. Now here it was again. Henry, you're back, said Willem. Henry nodded and replied, Yes, I am, Willem. I'm back to stay. The old me has gone, and the weight of my father has gone. The weight of our history has gone, and the blinkers have been taken away. I can see again. Willem walked over to Henry and wrapped his arms around him. Great to see you again, he said. Henry glowed a little more and somehow seemed to grow taller again. Mary was unaware of this connection between Henry and Willem and stood back with a puzzled look on her face and asked, You two know each other very well, don't you? Henry answered, The old Henry didn't know Willem that well at all, but this Henry knows Willem very well. We've worked together many times. A shiver ran through Mary and she asked, What do you mean? And you've worked with us as well, Mary. Another time, another place, said Henry. All of a sudden, Mary understood and walked over to both Henry and Willem. The three of them hugged one another during this sudden recognition of another life and another time. The change in Henry was so profound that when Andrew rang to find how everything was going on his side of the island, he hardly recognized who Henry was. Henry's response to his smart remark was so clear. Andrew could not get Henry on the back foot about anything. Henry was so calm. What's up with you, Henry? You seem to have everything under control, but why is there no noise on your end of the phone? What's happening? Asked Henry. Well, Andrew, I just decided that we didn't need the noise, so we haven't gotten it. We haven't got it. You should try it, answered Henry. The force that came through the phone almost pushed Andrew backwards. Henry, what's happened? You've changed, he asked. Henry answered, That's right, Andrew. I've dropped all of that heavy stuff, and we've decided to have things feeling a little bit nicer around here. You may want to try it as well. Andrew started to laugh, but then he felt the pressure of what Henry had said. He felt a responsibility to actually make things better. Those few words that Henry had spoken to Andrew had such force and such detail, but he could not figure out from the simple words what messages they actually passed on. He could not figure out the possibility of that happening. There was too much information, yet Henry had only spoken a few words. Andrew knew that there was something special happening, and he said to Henry, Henry, I can feel lots of things happening, lots of things being transmitted to me. There's something changing around here. It's a bit strange. You better fill me in. Henry replied, There's nothing to fill you in about, Andrew. You know exactly what's happening. It's time once again for us all to pull together and not only get through the cyclone, but get through the rubbish that's been holding us all in a mini cyclone in this place we call Norwick. It's time for change, Andrew, and I think the cyclone has brought that about. Andrew understood exactly what Henry was talking about, but he dreaded this time because he enjoyed the harshness of his life. He enjoyed being Irish. He enjoyed drinking and getting out of line. He enjoyed the occasional punch up at the local hotel, and he knew that this would now be all over. Oh, Henry, surely it's not time yet, asked Andrew. It's time, Andrew. Time to straighten yourself out, said Henry. Okay, I'll talk to you later, Henry, said Andrew reluctantly as he hung up the phone. Mary could not believe what was happening. She had been so impressed with Henry before this time, but now she just stood there with her mouth open. Willem turned to Mary and said, "You can close your mouth now, Mary. It's all real. Come on, let's eat." Willem then led the way into the kitchen. Everything came to order just as it always did when Willem spoke. The three of them headed off to prepare something to eat as if they all knew exactly what job to do without having to discuss it with one another. Before long, a beautiful meal was on the table. In the darkness of the house, even though it was daylight outside, Mary lit candles and placed them on the table to make it look like a celebration. As they sat and ate their meal by candlelight, the cyclone did not really affect them in the room. It was all rather surreal and mystical. The three of them remembered quite clearly the times they had done this before, and they basked in the beautiful energies that they each transmitted. Everything seemed to disappear, even their past histories. Mary living on the other side of the island with her mother, Willem existing as Heinrich Smithers, the person who was isolated and in direct competition to the Olsen family, and Henry and his ownership of the island and his past with his father. All of that disappeared as they sat in a new world. It was Mary who broke the silence. "Come on, you two. Let's eat this beautiful meal," she said. They smiled at each other and proceeded to eat their meal. It was a beautiful moment. So we'll end this with just that one chapter. And when I return, I'll be reading chapter 34 of The Magic of Life. And so I wish you a perfect life, perfect health, and a magic future. Thank you.